Well, good morning, afternoon, evening. 10 minutes late, but hey, what's 10 minutes between friends? Good afternoon, Lucy Bramley. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm good. I'm good. Are you all right?
I am, as I said before we jumped on, happy and heavy all at the same time. There's a lot of funny energy going on in my world, Lucy, but it's not all bad at all. Just
Mm,
interesting times is probably the best way of sort of starting our lovely chat today.
yeah, interesting times. It's a good phrase. Yeah, definitely.
But there's a lot of
Mm,
stuff been going on with you recently, so we're going to have a little exploration. Originally we said about inviting some people in to join
mm,
us. No
mm,
one took us up on this occasion, but we'd just love to state, that remains an open offer. Like Lucy and
mm,
I'd love to get you into the mix, into the conversation. If you're interested in systems, sustainability, reimagining, work, society, anything really. We're just pretty
mm.
interested to have you on. So feel free to join us at some point. But I'd love to explore a little bit what's been going on with you in the last couple of weeks, Lucy, because I think you've got some quite exciting news, haven't you?
Yeah, and if there is anyone around, if anyone's watching us now, if you've got a question or if you want to pitch in, please do. Or if somebody's watching the replay and wants to comment, they can do that, can't they? People can comment on
Absolutely.
LinkedIn and stuff. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I've had something new come into my life the past couple of weeks. So I was really reevaluating what I was going to do with the rest of my life after I left IT. So I was in IT for a long time. Some people might know, if they've tuned into us before or if they know me and have kind of followed my movements. So I was taking a bit of time to think, what do I want to do? And I'd set up my own coaching business, which is really on two pillars of sustainability. So, how can we be personally sustainable, look after our mental health, our physical health, live a life of well-being, happiness, and joy, and also planetary sustainability. So, how can we be more aware of the impact that we make on each other and on the planet and on, all the creatures and natural habitats that we share it with. And that's obviously a really big focal point in the media at the moment, which is great, because it needs to be. But
Hmm.
I was also wrestling with feelings of, okay, well, now I'm not spending all my day thinking about tech stuff, working for a big tech company. I've got all these new thoughts piling in about what I want to spend my time doing and what my business might look like. And I don't mind saying I was a bit unsettled, really, and thinking, is this really what I want to do? I love coaching. I love spending time with people, whether it's individuals or teams. I like giving people space to think and to develop their own ideas, but also to use what I know from my life, from my career, and I've had more than one. So things that I've done at work and outside of work. It's all great, but I did feel like there was something missing and that I need to make more of an impact with my community and to start where I live in terms of really walking and talking all the things that I believe in about being more sustainable and about living a different life, which I know you quite like to talk about, regeneration, and I'm not sure if it's a word that I really, maybe I don't really understand it, or maybe I can't visualize it, but absolutely about, okay, what is our impact on each other and on the world? And let's be aware of that for starters. And then let's think about what we need to do to change it so that we can make sure that there is still a habitable world for people after the next 7, 8, 50, 100 years. And I was thinking, well, how can I square that with life coaching? And then one of our district councillors, I live in the New Forest, so we have New Forest District Council is one of the governmental bodies in our area. One of our councillors resigned and happens to cover the ward that I live in, which is quite a small place, nearly 6,000 people eligible to vote across two villages really, and then a couple of outlying sort of smaller hamlets. And so I put myself forward for the Green Party, which I'm a member, because they were really keen to put somebody in. I didn't hear about this outside of Green Party communications, so that's great. And we're really putting some work into it. So it's not one of these things where, we just throw your hat in the ring and see what happens. I'm campaigning, so I was out all morning delivering leaflets where I live. Tomorrow there's going to be 8 of us in the next village, which is a bit bigger than the village that I live in, to try and get round as many houses as we can to deliver a message about what I want to do, which is something to do with the Green Party, but it's more really about what local people want, what local people are concerned about, obviously is an environmental agenda, a green agenda, an equality agenda, but it's not really necessarily about national issues when you look at something like this. So actually, that came into my life at just the right time. And I probably feel a bit like you know, I've got a lot of energy for what I'm doing, but also a heaviness around, gosh, you know, all these people that I need to go and talk to, and are they, you know, what are they going to say to me? You know, how are the conversations going to go? It can be a bit scary. And I find it easy to talk to people, but I need a lot of time to regenerate myself, you know, when out kind of outside of conversations. I'm not one of these endlessly extrovert people who just gets energy from spending time with other people. I need to recharge, you know, on my own, or in my very small family unit of 2 of us. So it's interesting, and each day is different because I've never done anything like this before. So learning about campaigning, even learning about what local issues are for other people, and you know, and what life's like for somebody that may only live a couple of 100 yards away from me, but it's very different to what it's like for me. So yeah, that's what's been going on.
Oh well, good luck with it. I just think it's amazing. I just think the thing I'm so impressed with is, like you say, when I look at you, even in the last year and a half, Lucy, how you've gone from big corporate job to this vision of definitely trying to help more people through that more sustainable lens, to actually suddenly being, you know, a representative for the party for global issues, but from a local lens. And I just think, if you'd looked back 18 months ago, would you have predicted you'd be involved in what you're involved in now?
No. I've got a lot of respect for people that do things that are political, whether that's district councils, parish councils, county councils, unitary authorities. You know, we've got Bournemouth, Poole and Christchurch just down the road from us. People that stand for Parliament, who, you know, as we've seen over the last few years, you can risk your life in that job. You know, it really generates a lot of different feelings for people. They get a lot of flack, and you know, including a lot of unpleasantness on social media and in real life. So yeah, I've always had a lot of respect, but couldn't really imagine sticking my head above the parapet myself, albeit, you know, at a local level, not really national. But it needs doing, and I think that was one of the reasons that we wanted to have this discussion today, is that I'm a big believer in, if we want to change the way things work in the world, we've actually got an awful lot of influence as consumers and as civilians, you know, and as neighbours and colleagues. So, you know, what we say with our words, how we communicate with our elected representatives, how we spend our money, how we ask, you know, for governments and companies to spend our money. I think we've got a lot of sway in that, and I don't know if people realise it. Or maybe if people have got the time to do something about it, because you do have to create time to think about, you know, okay, what do I spend my money on? You know, where do I buy my food? What food do I buy? We've talked a lot about pensions. It's a great example, you know, for those of us that are fortunate enough to have pension funds. Where are they invested? And as you know, we have to put a lot of effort into to really delve around and find out what these funds are, what companies are behind them, what are they doing in terms of spending our money, and you know, where are they investing, what are they doing to kind of grow the funds that you would expect in your retirement. Even something simple like car insurance. I phoned my car insurer a couple of weeks ago, and I asked them some really basic questions about, are you divesting from fossil fuels? Where do you invest, you know, the funds that hold up, you know, our insurance policies? And the people that answer the phone are great, you know, they're really great customer service skills, but they don't necessarily have the answer to these questions. But I was on the phone for 3/4 of an hour to my insurer, and I don't mind saying it's privilege, you're a part of Direct Line Group, and I thought they were great. You know, the lady that I was talking to on the phone, she did loads of research, she was talking to colleagues on their social media comms system, you know, finding out answers to these questions. She was genuinely concerned. She wanted to go off and have deeper conversations, you know, up her line with management. And she said their CEO was at COP26 at the time, because it was one of those weeks that was on when I spoke to them. So, you know, let's create a bit of time to get interested in these things, and because it, you know, the future of mankind and a lot of the wildlife, you know, that we like to have around us, or that we don't even know exists, depends on it. It depends on us taking action right now.
I love that. I'm just going to say hello to Elise. Thanks for popping along, Elise. Always good to see you. Hello to Lucy
Elise.
as well.
Yeah, I'd love to know your views as well, Elise, on all of this.
Absolutely. Please do chip in, Elise. If you've got any thoughts, challenges, questions that you want to put into the mix, because it's Lucy that really helped me get that bit more activist recently. So, I actually did, if anybody's interested, I've done a couple of live streams recently around some of the learning that I've had following Lucy's advice to try and get a bit more activist. And when we say activist, sometimes everyone thinks about pinning themselves down at Heathrow Airport, and that's an important activist as well. But what we're talking about here are what are those steps we can each take individually that adds up to a huge collective impact. And one is finance, without a doubt. So what I did, I went through this curious journey of, okay, where is that privileged pension fund of mine invested? And I got curious about, what does ethical mean? So what are in these ethical funds? And what really shocked me, Lucy, was seeing Rio Tinto, mining company, BHP, mining company, Shell, oil company. Now, all of those things absolutely surround everything that we're using now, a part of life as is. But if that remains, quote unquote, an ethical investment, is it really going to drive the change that we need? If we're going to greenwash finance by putting fossil fuels as part of an ethical investment. And I just found that quite shocking, really, and quite misdirecting to put in those sort of funds into and sort of wash it underneath an ethical fund. And that's just one example, right? I then look at a whole range of other things, the stuff I'm buying, right? You're brilliant. I am looking to buy an electric car, which I think is a big step forward from the one I have. But the rare earth metals that go into making an electric vehicle are still being extracted from different parts of the world, impacting communities far away from here, just so I can drive a car that do I actually need? So there's so much in all of this. And I think if we just start, as you said, with awareness, okay, what is the impact? What is the impact of each of my choices? And what can I make an impacting in the next 3, 9, 12 months? That's where I'm sort of sitting, because it can get overwhelming really quickly. So I'm sort of like, how can we be kind to ourselves, but also challenge ourselves? Lucy, sort of the space I'm sitting in more and more.
Yeah. It's asking yourself why questions quite a lot, isn't it? So, what do I use the car for? I mean, because you could start with, why do I need a car? And most of us do, and I guess unless you live in central London and are happy to depend on public transport, which has been difficult with COVID, then most of us do need some kind of car at the moment. Public transport's not great in most of the rest of the UK. But what do you use it for? Most car journeys are less than a mile. So why are people not walking? Why are people not cycling? Less than a mile. A mile's great exercise. And I know we're all in a hurry, but it's factor it in. Give yourself a bit more time. We all need to do exercise. We all need to do some kind of physical activity. So if you are going less than a mile, then think, is there another way I can do it, or do I need to do it? Could I do it another day? I don't know if I told you my story. The nearest sort of large market town to me is Ringwood. So I go there, to get supplies and to go to the library and to meet people for coffee and all that kind of stuff. And now I have to have 3 reasons in my mind why I go to Ringwood. I won't go for just one thing. So I used to put over there, go to the supermarket, not think twice about it. But now I'm thinking, okay, why do I need to go? Is there something I'm picking up from the library? Am I meeting somebody? Am I doing a bit of charity work because there's a charity that I'm involved in there? Any reason like that, but bulk them up to make the car journey a bit more worthwhile, because that's like 10 miles for me, 10 miles of petrol, of carbon. But if you've got a car, it is a bit of a challenge. Why not keep it a bit longer? Because there's a lot of embedded carbon already in it, embodied carbon, in manufacturing the thing. So if you buy a new one, then, as you say, they've got to build it. And electric cars are amazing, because then you're not using petrol to travel about. Obviously, you still need power. So then you get into the question of, are you with a renewables supplier for your power, so that when you plug it in on your drive, you know that at some point your energy supplier is doing something about renewables. You might not necessarily be getting it from renewables, but some of them do their best, to make sure that they use mostly renewables. So do some research around that. Some of them been going to the wall as well lately, because of the problems with energy prices. So yeah, there's a lot of thinking, but it can be interesting. It can be fun to kind of think about shopping around, thinking about asking these questions, gathering the data, as you say, enlightening yourself on what goes on. It's quite shady, I think, financial services. There's a lot of shadow behind that. And I don't know about you. I thought long and hard about which bank I was with. I've changed bank a few times in my life, and now I'm with Triodos, who only invest in ethical, sustainable businesses. But I don't have a lot of money in there with them, So what I've got in my pension is a lot more meaningful. So it's worth spending the time, on both things.
I love that, and I think that there's something that's coming up. Actually, I'm going to do a quick share of it. Actually, it's something I also done a live about last week. Is this West Papua, which is where there's basically a massive gold mine over there in it's basically next to Papua New Guinea, but it's West Papua, and this is what really shocked me, Lucy, more than anything, when I was looking at my whole pension and seeing Rio Tinto was in there, right? Because I was like, okay, yeah, mining company, that's probably not fully ethical, a little bit of greenwashing. But then when you dive even deeper, there's actually there's fights for liberation literally happening in West Papua because they just want to live in line with nature systems, live off the land, live with their indigenous ways. But because Rio Tinto and one other called Freeport, two basically multinational mining companies, they have rights linked to the government to extract the raw materials out of their home, in essence, and then sell the materials all around the world. And they get none of the proceeds, none of the profits. It's all literally taken out of their back garden and used for us around the rest of the world. And when you sort of sit in that, you're like, wow. So if I move my pension, or I can find a way to move my pension into one that is genuinely ethical, one that is consciously trying to avoid that type of oppression somewhere else in the world, like, we have got that power. It's not easy, as you say. You've got to be really intentional about it. And there's not even all the funds there yet, unfortunately, for me to be able to actually place it. Like, the system literally is saying, no, you can't invest in that more inclusive, healthier, sustainable way because the fund doesn't exist. You've got to still have Shell in it. You've still got to have Rio Tinto in it. So there's some real, this is part of my happy but sort of like anxious energy at the moment, is just around this. You can be aware but also feel a bit trapped. You're like, you can see what needs to change, but you can only do what you can do. So it's sort of like being okay with that and not allowing the sort of tsunami, which I can sometimes. A tsunami of an awareness is just almost too much sometimes. You just go, oh. So it's just trying to balance that being aware but also taking action and not being paralyzed, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and when's it going to happen? I think you and I are both quite impulsive. So if I decide I want to do something, I want to do it now. I don't want to do it next year, even though that's only a month and a half away. I want to do it now. And sometimes this kind of change, it does take a while. You work for a company, they'll have a pension fund, they'll have trustees. So it's a conversation with them, isn't it, around, look, this isn't meeting my goals and objectives, so what are we going to do about it? And I would say get some colleagues involved in that with you. And if you've got a works council or any kind of employee representation on the pension trustees, I know we're going into a bit of detail on this, but I think it's useful for people because sometimes that the lack of knowing which route to take, as you say, you can just get completely paralyzed by it and then think, well, I can't do anything, but you can. And I'm in a position where I've got like 3 pensions really. One was my own. I opted out of SERPs when you could do that, the state earnings related pension that we used to have in the UK. There was an option to put that money somewhere else as long as you were putting it into a pension. I'm not quite sure why they did that. I think it was just to give us choice. But I've got a chunk of money there, so I've already moved that to a company who do ethical, sustainable investing. And it was a struggle to find them. My friend Simon is also my financial advisor. He's a professional, independent financial advisor, and I gave him quite a lot of stick about this being important to me. And he wants to make a difference as well. So he went and found these people, and we're not being paid by them at all, but they're called EQ investors, and they're a B Corp. which is really meaningful and not an easy stamp to get. So the whole way they work, is about ethics and sustainability. So I just feel good, from that point of view. But that's like the SERP's chunk of money. Then I've got a pension from when I worked for Microsoft, and I'm going to move that to them as well. That's with Fidelity. And honestly, I'm not happy about the communications that I've had with Fidelity or with Microsoft about where they put the money. And it's all the same companies that you listed out. All these pension funds are exactly the same, really. And they, a lot of them will look at ESG, which is that kind of ethical, sustainable, and governance sort of tripartite criteria. But again, it's a bit shadowy, and it's, it doesn't necessarily give you what you want, and not all funds are covered by it. So that was one thing. And then I've got, probably the biggest chunk for me is with IBM's pension funds, which are managed by Legal and General, and there's some quite specific wrappers around that which make it challenging to move, because I could lose out. And we've got to think about that, personally, as well as, being sort of philanthropic and trying to do the best thing. So that's a longer conversation again. And but it's important, if it means something to you, then it's important to get involved.
I love it, and I hope this is really helping, for those that are joining us live or watching this back again. We're this space, I really appreciate Lucy, and I appreciate anyone that's joining us. We're just trying to explore here. Like, we don't have all the answers, far from it. Like, I hardly know anything. It's just this whole it's just this awareness for me, particularly the last year and a half, even more so, Lucy, that like everything is connected. Like our pension funds, our food, the clothing we buy, the cars we drive, the houses we have, the computers we use. Like, you can't use or buy or look at any of this stuff in isolation. And I think that's been the big. I sort of knew that, like I knew it conceptually, but like I felt, oh my God, for me to have an upgrade of a mobile phone means the impact on A, B, C, and D. Like, I think the more we're in that dialogue, the more we're exploring together, not judging anyone, but just saying, hey, oh my God, I didn't realize. I genuinely didn't realize that for me to have that bit of food has added X amount of CO2 to the planet. And by the way, I don't even need it because it's not a critical part of my diet. So it's just pure fanciful to have that bit of food that's from 3,000 miles away, for example. So I think our invitation here is just get curious, isn't it? And to just ask more questions, I think, really.
Yeah, and to make a stand for that, needing an upgrade on everything all the time. You mentioned phones, the phones, laptops, these electronic devices. There's a lot wrapped up in this around the fact that they're designed so that they're not going to last that long. And also, I understand that technology changes a lot, but I do think we get a little bit conned about how often it changes and what that means for the underlying hardware. And even if that is a thing, right? Actually, we said need, do we need a new phone? Do we need a new laptop? Do we need a new Sonos? Whatever it is. Do we need a new Alexa thing listening to us in the corner of the room? No, like why can't the ones we've got last longer? Because, as you said, they're all made using a combination of things that are going to be no longer available to us, or that we shouldn't be using. The best place for all of these fossil fuels, which is, as you've told me a few times, behind most of the plastics that we use in everyday life, the best place for them is in the ground, where they're not going to be releasing carbon into the atmosphere, and where we're not going to be, taking people's homelands away just so that we can dig some of this stuff up. And these stories like the ones that you surface about people in the global south that we don't hear about, and even in the global north, there's fruit pickers in Spain without liberty, really, not getting paid a decent wage, not, with nowhere to live, and it's invisible to us a lot of the time because we don't think about where the stuff that we consume comes from.
It's so good. What I'm going to do, just a brilliant weave in there, actually. I'm going to share something just very quickly for anyone that might be interested. There's no pressure, but hopefully you can see this is the event that I'm joining personally as Garry on this Wednesday, the 1st of December. And I mentioned about West Papua. So this is basically the part of Papua New Guinea to the west, which is basically literally fighting for its solidarity. Why is that? Because they just want to live in line with their own ways, indigenous ways of being, but they're being told by multinational corporations that we want to take your basically gold out of your part of the world and sell it all around the world. And then they're losing their own livelihood. And what this is all about is literally an understanding for us in the global north, all around the world. And there's a gallery that's being launched this Wednesday. So this takes place between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. UK time. And it's really just to help raise awareness, back to this point that Lucy's made, that I've made. You know, we can't really take connected, felt, embodied awareness into the world unless we really understand better. And I'm learning all of the time, Lucy. It blew my mind again, back to what you taught me about financial services. Like when I looked at what's happening in West Papua and realized that one of the companies that is extracting materials from their back garden is in my pension fund, which is classed as ethical, that just in my mind, I just literally just sat there for about half an hour just going, this is just madness. Like, you know, it just so how to unpick all of that is just, I think, an important part of our dialogue and all of our explorations individually and collectively is how do we get super curious? I don't want to be like judgy. That's the worst thing we can do. It's like, it's not about shame. It's not about judgment, but how do we stay super curious about what's really going on and how do we collectively make better change? And I think that's a real invitation, isn't it? And I hope people take that. And Helen's joined us as well to say the world needs.
Hello, Helen.
So yeah, thank you, Helen, for joining us. Yeah, Lucy asked some amazing questions. She's one of my teachers, that's for sure.
Helen's actually a colleague. So Helen's one of the employability skills coaches at Bournemouth and Poole College, spending time with the young people of the area to make sure they understand what they need to be equipped with to be successful in their lives. And she took me for a wonderful walk last week along the seafront from Bournemouth and Poole, from Lansdowne campus down to Boscombe. And she's a great advocate for exercise being good for you, because she's had a terrible problem with her back, and it just appears to be in abeyance because of this walking she's been doing. So as a lesson to us all, to get more exercise into our lives, because you know it's good for you, but also it makes you feel good. It clears your head out, because you know, back to what you were saying, some of these stories, they're quite heavy. They're very heavy discussions, and we can start to blame ourselves and think, well, I'm implicit in this because you know, I've got my pension in this fund which funds Rio Tinto, so it makes it look like I'm saying it's okay, or I want a gold necklace for Christmas, and the, you know, the raw materials for that may come from places like West Papua, but you know what we shouldn't do, as you said, Garry, is judge ourselves and others and say, you know, this is just all awful. We need to maintain positivity and think, okay, well, what can the future look like? And let's have reasonable conversations. Let's not fling rocks at one another. Let's look at what we want the future to look like and create it together.
That's beautiful. Little bit on, that's just beautiful. And it is that co-creation piece you're speaking to. This is brilliant. Helen just said I'm on the same walk now. Yeah, I love it. Using exercising simultaneously. I love it. What role modeling, Helen. Love that so much. And I think because that co-creation piece is the bit. So if we go sort of almost full circle for me in this conversation, I think you in Microsoft, me in my current day job, which has got corporate, it's a very standard situation generally, I would say, from the thousands of people I've interacted with the last 5 years, Lucy, that once we put that corporate or workplace jacket on, for some reason, a lot of our humanity sort of gets suppressed. Like we go into day job mode, we've got numbers to hit, job to write, and suddenly that challenge, this inquiry, this curiosity, this desire to connect the dots and be part of something co-creative just gets totally suppressed. And it's like, how can we sort of reimagine? Yeah, how do we reimagine work, society, locality, our local communities? Because we can all be part of that. And I just think the point I'm trying to make is this agency piece. We've all got so much more freedom and agency than I think we realize, because it's just been stuffed away for so long behind a job title or maybe a bit of fear or whatever. And I really want to invite people to get curious, get personally activist in their local communities and in the workplace, and just ask more questions, because I think there's going to be a lot more fun on the other side.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, that questions like what's holding me back, what's stopping me from saying something, and you said fear, and I was thinking that probably is quite a big one for a lot of people, because you've got a mortgage to pay, you've got kids to get through school, and you're worried about what future, you know, they're going to have. Nothing's nothing's cheap, really. And prices are going up. We might have a problem coming with inflation and availability of things. So, making choices, sometimes it might seem like a bit of a middle class privilege, but it's not. It is about life and death, really. There's no two ways about it. And if you give yourself the opportunity to think about it and to have reasonable discussions, you shouldn't worry about your future. You shouldn't worry about the safety of your job. These questions need to be asked. It's probably more about how do you ask it, without completely losing your rag. And I struggle with that. I think I've always run quite hot. There's an anger and a directness below the surface, which doesn't necessarily resonate with people. And then you've got to tune into what different personality types people have got. How do they want to hear this? Do they want to get into an impassioned debate, which is very easy between me and you? Or, actually, do they kind of want to start from somewhere very calm, and you have to find something that they're interested in and start the discussion with that.
So good, so good. And I want to say it again, like for anyone watching us live, watching this back, like we really do want you to get in this conversation. Like it is a totally, I hope you're seeing it. It's an exploratory space. Like we have not got all the answers. We've got experiences, we've got learnings that we've found, we've got dots we're joining together. This is not about like taking anyone down or trying to destroy anybody or anything per se. Yes, we do want to drive more equity. Yes, we do want to create, conditions that actually allow us to live in line with nature's systems and not completely destroy the world that we're living on. Like this is pretty existential, but at the same time, we've got way more agency. Like the little things we can do together make a huge, huge difference. And I love this. Like it seems so paradoxical, Lucy. Like big, and you and I joke about this all the time, right? Local versus big system. But it's all of that all of the time. And I think the more we get used to like, I can think about the local situation and think big at the same time. It's like, yeah, you can. That's okay. Like it doesn't have to be binary. Like it's not one or the other. Like it really is an and I think that's the exciting thing for me.
Yeah, and would love to hear people's ideas on all manner of different things. All these systems in life. We've been unpicking the seams of a few, but there's so many other things that would be interesting to hear from people about.
Love that. Love that. Well, look, there we go. Typical Garry, Lucy. Half an hour gone. Boom. And thankfully, Helen's been using her technology and exercising simultaneously with us. And thank you also, Elise and Gabe as well for joining us. Is there anything else you want to leave people to ponder or reflect upon as we go into the rest of our day, Lucy, today?
I think be hopeful about the future and think, how can you create hope in yourself and in your little corner of the world, wherever that is.
Love it. And what I would add as well is support, like whether it's local community group, whether it's a virtual community, like genuinely find people that you can have this sort of discussion with, because what I found, it can be quite isolating if you're just within a job role trying to speak about this stuff. You do need cross-sector, cross-functional sort of community is a really big help as well. That's what I found to be helpful.
Yeah, lots of learning to be had there as well, isn't there, from other people, with what they know and how they live their life and what they found out and how they approach, challenges and opportunities. It's a gift. Absolutely.
Oh, you're a gift, Lucy Bramley. And thank you everyone for joining us. This is how cool. Like we had no idea where we'd go today. And I think that's quite I'm quite interested to listen back. I'm sure you've shared something new with me, Lucy. So
hopefully.
Importantly, good luck with the election. Can I say that?
Thank you. Yeah. 23rd of December, which is, inordinately festive, obviously. But hopeful that my message resonates with people and that we can make a good showing. And thanks for your support, Gaz. Really appreciate it.
As always, if I was living still locally, you'd get my vote without a shadow of a doubt. No, take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and have
thanks,
a good day.
everyone.